How did he become Minister of Magic? What did he do before taking the highest position in the government? And how? Did he follow a path that led to the destruction of his career, putting it above the well-being of his own people? Today, we are going to learn the story of Cornelius Fudge. Hey there, wizards! How's it going? If you're just arriving here at the Leaky Cauldron, don't be a muggle. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you can stay up to date with everything happening here. And don't forget, you can become a member to help support the channel. Or you can also send your comment through the thanks feature, and your comment will stand out from the others. Or you can just leave your like, share, and leave your comment, which is already very welcome. Cornelius Oswald Fudge was born into a British wizarding family. Nothing is known about his childhood or teenage years, but it's assumed that he studied at Hogwarts, and, given his history, presumably he also didn't take long to join the Ministry of Magic after finishing his studies.
It's also unknown what position he started his career in.
During the First Wizarding War, he worked for the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes. The members of this department were usually the first to arrive at places where an accident involving magic had occurred, a catastrophe where magic got out of control, especially when muggles were involved. Muggles witnessing magic or discovering something. Cornelius Fudge was a junior minister before becoming the top government official. In this department and in this role, he didn't run the department or make important decisions. His role was more administrative and institutional. He monitored reports of magical incidents, helped supervise the enforcement of protocols, and acted as an intermediary between the department and higher authorities in the ministry. In the early hours of November 1st, 1981, after the Potters were murdered and Harry survived Voldemort's curse, Sirius Black cornered Peter Pettigrew to confront him for betraying their friends. Where the tragic murder of 12 muggles occurred in an explosion that, until then, was believed to have been caused by Sirius Black, but it was actually Peter Pettigrew who caused the explosion, faked his own death, and framed Sirius Black. Cornelius was one of the first people to arrive at the scene and found Sirius laughing hysterically. Several bodies lay scattered in a large crater that had opened in the street. At that time, the Minister for Magic was a witch named Millicent Bagnold, and while she was in power during that very difficult period of the First Wizarding War, after Voldemort's fall, the United Kingdom began to restructure itself, and the strongest name to take over the Ministry of Magic was not Cornelius Fudge, but rather Bartholomew Crouch Sr., who was the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. He led a search, a hunt for dark wizards, but with the discovery that his son was one of the Death Eaters, and a trial that he held against his own son, in an attempt to show that it didn't matter if it was a member of his family or not. He would punish them the same way as anyone else. His name ended up weakening for the position. The position of Minister of Magic was offered several times to Albus Dumbledore, but the headmaster of Hogwarts refused it. It's in this scenario that Cornelius Fudge becomes Minister of Magic. A minister is elected by popular vote, and their term lasts 7 years, even though there is no limit to re-elections. But in times of crisis, the position of Minister of Magic is offered to people who are more qualified to handle it. In 1990, Cornelius Oswald Fudge becomes Minister of Magic, one of his first official duties. He visits the Muggle Prime Minister at the time to inform him that he has taken office and also to share relevant information. But the Muggle Prime Minister believed it was an opposition prank, trying to ruin his career. He even tried to throw Fudge out the window at the beginning of his term. Fudge was not confident at all. That's because he knew he wasn't the favorite to become minister. There were 2 other big names before him, and he was kind of the one who was left. So he was always asking Albus Dumbledore for advice. And even though he was seen as a bit clumsy, he still had a conciliatory attitude and a certain popularity. In the year 1992, when Voldemort set a trap for Dumbledore, getting him out of Hogwarts to try to steal the Philosopher's Stone through a Hogwarts professor. The Ministry of Magic starts investigating names that had any connection with the Dark Wizard in the past. The ministry begins conducting raids, such as interrogating people and searching residences. And it's in this scenario that Lucius Malfoy tries to get rid of some embarrassing things for him, which could cause him quite a headache.
He hides Tom Riddle's diary in Ginny Weasley's things
In an attempt to frustrate Arthur Weasley, who was a defender of Muggles, making his own daughter be incriminated there for attacking Muggle-borns. Besides that, he got rid of the problem, incriminated Arthur Weasley, and weakened someone who was in the Ministry, always fighting for Muggle rights.
This causes a crisis at Hogwarts in 1992 and 1993.
The Chamber of Secrets was reopened. Muggle-born students were attacked, and Fudge's biggest concern was to cover up the case, not solve it. No news of the attacks appears in the Daily Prophet. Then, pressured by the school board, Cornelius Fudge visits Hogwarts.
And his decision is to take Hagrid to Azkaban, since, according to him, people needed to see that he was doing something,
even if that doing something meant sending an innocent man without evidence to Azkaban with fabricated charges. Fudge had his doubts about Hagrid, and he claims that if someone else were caught, Hagrid would be released instantly. However, by then, he was already in Azkaban. But after the case was solved, Hagrid was indeed released. In summer 1993, Cornelius Fudge made a routine visit to Azkaban, as ministers do.
And he was carrying a copy of the Daily Prophet that day. Fudge was quite surprised to see the state of Sirius Black, who was a maximum security prisoner.
He wasn't affected by being near the Dementors. Unlike the other prisoners, who were nearly insane, Fudge leaves, giving his newspaper to Sirius, who requested it. That's when Sirius notices the family photo. Weasley, who had won a prize from the Daily Prophet and traveled to Egypt, and he recognizes Peter Pettigrew, disguised in his animagus form. He becomes driven to escape, get revenge, prove his innocence, and protect Harry. Sirius Black's escape from prison was a shock to the wizarding community, especially because, at that time, no one knew that an escape could happen from that prison. Sirius Black is thought to be the first to succeed, and everyone believed he would be caught soon. Fudge alerts the Muggle Prime Minister, which makes him contact the media and inform them about the danger of a madman on the loose. Without mentioning anything about magic, of course, and he creates a Muggle hotline to contact the Ministry, also disguised so that Sirius could be caught because of the call. Black with Harry, Fudge is reluctant to inform Harry about this family connection, which Arthur Weasley disagrees with, and Harry ends up overhearing a conversation between Arthur and Molly about it.
In that summer, Harry loses control, inflates his aunt, and runs away. This makes Fudge very worried, as he expected Harry to be caught by Sirius.
And when Harry arrives at the Leaky Cauldron, Fudge simply reassures him. He tells him that there was no problem, that these things really happened, and then Harry stays there until his classes start. The minister is relieved he's alive. In a misguided attempt to protect the students of Hogwarts, Cornelius Fudge orders that Dementors, the guards of Azkaban, stay on the Hogwarts grounds, and also that they search the Hogwarts Express. This caused Harry to suffer his first attack, due to his troubled and painful past, and the attraction the Dementors had for him. Because of this, everyone at the school found the presence of the Dementors disturbing. Not only there, but the residents of the nearby village, Hogsmeade, didn't like it at all either. But Fudge believed he was doing a great job. In October, after being alerted that Sirius Black had broken into Hogwarts on Halloween night, Fudge ordered the Dementors to patrol Hogsmeade. In December, he visits Hogwarts and talks with the professors and Madame Rosmerta at the Three Broomsticks. He explains that Sirius had betrayed the Potters, that he revealed their hiding place to Voldemort, and that his ultimate goal was to find Voldemort so he could regain his power. Harry overhears the conversation, learns Sirius was his godfather and best man at his parents' wedding, and becomes obsessed with revenge. In June, Fudge returns to Hogwarts to oversee Buckbeak's case, the hearing, the final hearing, the last appeal he had, which ends up being denied. He stays to oversee the Hippogriff's execution, but when he objects that the Hippogriff wasn't on the grounds after seeing it, he orders a search, but it's in vain since no one responds. Because the creature could fly, so it would have been easier for him to go looking in Celso. That night, after the Shrieking Shack events, Harry learns Sirius is innocent, but watches Snape capture his godfather after Dementor's attack. And Fudge is very pleased with this news and promises Snape that he will make sure he is awarded the Order of Merlin. But shortly after, Fudge finds out that Sirius Black has escaped, and Snape becomes upset, accusing Harry of being involved in it. But Fudge defends Harry, claiming that there was no way he could have done it because he was locked inside the hospital wing a minute before their conversation at the end of the school year. After the Dementors tried to give Harry a kiss and suck out his soul, Fudge agreed to remove them from the school. 1993 felt turbulent after Sirius Black's escape and near capture, but 1994 was even more eventful. Because in the summer, Fudge had a lot of work with the Department of Magical Games and Sports, and also with the Department of International Magical Cooperation. That year, the Quidditch World Cup final was in England, and the Triwizard Tournament was held at Hogwarts. During the ceremony of the World Cup final, Fudge proudly introduced Harry Potter, who was in his box, to other important leaders of the wizarding world. And still during the summer, Fudge treated the disappearance of a ministry employee, Bertha Jorkins, very lightly, claiming that she was really kind of absent-minded and that it was just like her to get lost like that, disappear, and not give any news. And he continued not giving proper attention to this case for the rest of the year. When Bartô Crouch, Sr. also disappeared, Dumbledore insisted that these cases were related.
This was likely connected to Voldemort, but Fudge insists there was no link and saw no relation. And in fact, he claims that Bartô Crouch, Sr. could have been attacked by Madame Maxime, since Harry claims that Bartô Crouch, Sr.
He was found near the Beauxbatons carriage, and this shows how Cornelius Fudge was extremely prejudiced against half-bloods. Fudge states that not all those who came from giants were harmless. He thought Dumbledore ignored it because of his ties to Hagrid, and also overlooked Madame Maxime. Dumbledore replies to the minister, saying he was biased against them for being half-giants.
On the day of the final task of the Triwizard Tournament, Cornelius Fudge replaced Percy Weasley as a judge, since Percy was substituting for Bartemius Crouch, Sr., right?
Had vanished, but he was there answering questions and being questioned about the disappearance and Bartemius Crouch Sr.'s recent odd behavior. So, Cornelius Fudge is the one who replaces Percy as a judge. The third task began at dusk, and the whole school was gathered around the maze. When Harry returns with Cedric's body, Cornelius Fudge is terrified and insists that the body be removed from the place because there were too many people there. He showed a fake concern for Cedric's parents, but the truth is, he was worried about how that would look for his career. A student dying during his administration in the tournament, which had its rules changed to be less dangerous. When Fudge was informed that the Death Eater responsible for the whole Triwizard Tournament trap had been caught, he heads to the castle accompanied by a Dementor for his personal safety. This made the Dementor sense Bartô Crouch Sr. and immediately give him the kiss, sucking out his soul. This meant Bartô Crouch Sr. could no longer testify or serve as a witness, which made Dumbledore extremely angry, and Fudge belittling it, saying that the world hadn't lost anything, that he was a lunatic making up lies, and Dumbledore believed it. Fudge now believes Dumbledore wanted his job and sought to destabilize the Ministry of Magic through chaos.
He refuses to believe in Voldemort's return and reacts with hostility to the proposals that Dumbledore makes to him, advising him to remove the Dementors from Azkaban, to send a peace envoy to the Giants. He considers this a major offense, claiming the people would oust him in the first week if they knew he spoke with giants. Influenced by Rita Skeeter's article, which claimed that Harry's scar caused lasting negative effects on his mental health, Fudge began to suggest that Harry was having hallucinations, treating him as an unreliable witness. Even when Harry named the Death Eaters who were present in the cemetery, Fudge refuses to believe it, saying that those were well-known names who had already been cleared in the past, and that Harry could have read those names somewhere. Fudge questions and challenges Dumbledore's trust in Harry again, claiming that Harry was a Parselmouth and that he was not trustworthy. That's why he was having hallucinations. And Dumbledore comes to Harry's defense, saying that he was just as mentally capable as everyone there.
In the end, Dumbledore comes in and confronts Fudge, saying that he was blinded by power, blinded by his love for the position.
And that, if he did the right thing, he could be recognized as the great hero who prevented the wizarding world from Voldemort's return, or be known as the great coward who did nothing and allowed Voldemort to come back, even if it destroyed everything built over the years. Fudge, deeply upset, still refuses to believe what was said. Severus Snape shows his own dark mark to prove that Voldemort had returned, since the tattoo burned into his arm was stronger.
Minerva also questions Fudge, but that only makes him even more irritated. And then he decides to leave, not before leaving the 1,000 Galleon prize, with Harry noting there should be a ceremony, but given the situation, it wouldn't happen.
In summer 1995, Cornelius Fudge uses his power and influence to manipulate the media, discrediting Dumbledore and Harry. Everyone who had any connection with Dumbledore, who was close to him or defended him, was removed from the ministry.
Dumbledore loses all his most prestigious positions, such as president of the Supreme Court of Wizards and also head of the International Confederation of Wizards.
In addition, Fudge makes several changes to the law to favor his narrative. Fudge appoints Percy Weasley as his junior minister, intending to spy on the Weasley family because of their closeness to Dumbledore, and Percy, obviously, had the ambition to pursue a career.
He supports the Ministry of Magic and gets very angry when Arthur suggests Fudge might be using him to spy on the family.
During the holidays, Harry is attacked by Dementors, uses magic, and is notified by the Ministry of Magic.
Fudge, in a big hurry, insists on expelling Harry from Hogwarts, even breaking the law, because no Hogwarts student can be expelled without a hearing, much less by the Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore visits the ministry to point out to Fudge that his strict law enforcement actually led him to break all the laws. He ensures Harry gets a formal hearing, but Fudge changes its location and time to try to hurt Harry, causing him to arrive late.
But Dumbledore, being clever, arrives at the ministry 3 hours early, anticipating this. Fudge takes a leadership role in the case against Harry in the Supreme Court of Wizards, and he actively tries to discredit Harry. And during the hearing, he kept refusing to listen to witnesses talking about things Harry had done in the past, things he himself had acquitted him of, like when he inflated his aunt. He notes Harry had already been warned for using magic outside school in his second year. So, when Harry says it was a house elf, he uses that as an argument that Harry was making it up. Dumbledore offers to bring Dobby to the hearing since he worked at Hogwarts, but Fudge refuses, saying he doesn't have time for house elves and wants to finish quickly. And Dumbledore?
Obviously, he says that if he was a fair man who wanted justice to know the truth, then of course he would listen to as many witnesses as necessary.
After hearing Mrs. Figg as a witness, the majority of the Supreme Court chooses to acquit Harry, frustrating Cornelius Fudge, who wanted to expel him. But Fudge's schemes didn't stop there, because he used his power as a ruler to interfere at Hogwarts, creating Educational Decree Number 22. He did this late at night on August 30th, 1995, increasing the ministry's control over Hogwarts. The decree let the minister select a teacher if the headmaster did not. Then Fudge appoints his senior undersecretary, Dolores Umbridge, as defense against the dark arts teacher. This caused some outrage among people who were seeing what was happening in the wizarding community, like Griselda Marchbanks, who was an educator responsible for administering the ordinary wizarding level exams at Hogwarts. She resigns, claiming that Hogwarts was not Fudge's backyard, and he couldn't turn the school into his platform. Fudge and Umbridge established a teaching program where students didn't practice defense. They only learned theory from a completely unfounded book.
All of this was due to the paranoid belief of the Minister for Magic that Dumbledore was training an army to take over the ministry. Not satisfied with appointing Umbridge as the defense against the dark arts teacher, Cornelius Fudge names her as High Inquisitor, giving her powers almost equal to the headmaster.
In this way, the Ministry of Magic extends its power to Hogwarts, causing Umbridge to fire teachers and even attack teachers using the authority of the Ministry of Magic.
Using Aurors, Professor Minerva McGonagall is attacked by Aurors. Hagrid is attacked by Aurors in the dead of night in an attempt to remove him from Hogwarts. Umbridge was very prejudiced, viewing half-bloods like Fudge did, When Harry Potter is caught breaking the rule of one of the decrees, Dumbledore takes the blame and says that he instructed Harry to form an army. Fudge orders Dumbledore sent to Azkaban, but Dumbledore refuses. Fudge still tries to confront Dumbledore, asking if he would dare to face him, Umbridge, and 2 more Aurors. But Dumbledore says he doesn't want to do that, and would only do it if he was forced to, because it would be extremely unwise, and he doesn't want to hurt any of them. With Dumbledore away from Hogwarts, Dolores Umbridge takes over as head of the school, but outside of Hogwarts something very worrying happens. A mass escape from Azkaban prison, with 10 extremely dangerous criminals escaping.
And Fudge tries to blame this on Sirius Black. But people start to see that something is strange, that this version doesn't make sense.
By repeatedly ignoring all of Dumbledore's warnings and pleas, Fudge allowed Voldemort to act behind the scenes for a whole year, bringing Dementors to his side, giants, werewolves, all those marginalized and dissatisfied with the Ministry of Magic.
During this period, Death Eaters who had been acquitted, like Lucius Malfoy, remained under Fudge's trust. Cornelius managed to cause a lot of damage.
While he held his position, he manipulated the media and looked out for himself. The United Kingdom was in chaos, and then, only when he was summoned to the Ministry of Magic on the night of the battle at the Department of Mysteries, and saw Voldemort with his own eyes, that's when he simply realized that Dumbledore and Harry were telling the truth, forced to admit he was wrong, pressured by the people and the media. Fudge is dismissed 2 weeks after the Department of Mysteries battle, due to his own fault. All of Great Britain was not at all prepared for the war that was about to unfold. Voldemort and the Death Eaters had an entire year to plan, without being interrupted.
Before being dismissed, however, Fudge made desperate attempts to remain in office.
He tried to get Dumbledore to arrange a meeting between him and Harry, to ask Harry to declare to the media that the Ministry was making an effort to try to fight Voldemort.
In other words, in short, Fudge was asking Harry to do what he was claiming Harry was doing, which was lying. But obviously, Dumbledore didn't accept that, and Harry wouldn't accept it either.
Besides that, before being fired, Fudge was threatened by Voldemort to leave his position, to resign and hand it over to him.
Otherwise, a massacre of Muggles would occur, but Fudge, showing unusual courage, refuses.
And then, the Death Eaters attack the Brockdale Bridge, causing several Muggles to get hurt. Even after being dismissed, Fudge remained in politics.
The new Minister of Magic, Rufus Scrimgeour, who was the head of the Auror Office,
he kept him as an advisor and as a sort of messenger, acting as an intermediary between him and the Prime Minister.
Muggle. And in the summer of 1996, Cornelius Fudge goes to the Muggle Prime Minister
to tell him that he had been dismissed, to explain everything that had happened, and that the new minister would be there to talk to him when the full consequences of Fudge's actions, or lack thereof, regarding Voldemort's return became known. The wizarding community issued an almost unanimous condemnation of his term in office.
Fudge later remarked he had never seen people so united as they were when removing him from the government.
Given this widespread disapproval, exactly what Dumbledore predicted happened. He was remembered as the greatest coward to ever serve as Minister for Magic.
It is not known what happened to Fudge after Voldemort killed Rufus Scrimgeour and took over the Ministry of Magic.
It's also unknown what happened to him after Voldemort's defeat. But anyway, his most precious asset, which was his reputation, his image, and his career, was in the trash, because he put the wizarding world and the Muggle world at risk. And because of his greed, he became exactly the man who gave Voldemort room to act. And despite all of Fudge's actions, the Ministry of Magic seemed to learn nothing, because before Rufus Scrimgeour was killed, he also tried to do what Fudge wanted.
Fudge's plan was to use Harry, after Voldemort's return was confirmed, as a poster boy.
And Rufus Scrimgeour tried to do that with Harry, but he wasn't successful.
Obviously, Scrimgeour, even giving his life there at the Ministry of Magic and not giving up anything about Harry to Voldemort, made the same mistakes, prioritizing the Ministry's reputation over the real safety of the people. It was only after Voldemort's fall, when Kingsley Shacklebolt took over as Minister of Magic.
That's when all these mistakes and all the corruption committed by Fudge and his predecessors start to be undone, start to be corrected. And Fudge was remembered as the greatest coward of all time. Because, on top of everything, he not only refused to believe in Voldemort's return, he tried to make others, Harry, Dumbledore, look like liars, deliberately changed laws for his own benefit, and acted only to serve himself. Ultimately, he's the type of villain who doesn't appear villainous. And that's the story of Cornelius Fudge, my wizards.
I hope you liked today's episode and learning more about Cornelius Fudge. I hope the series develops the character more, since he'll appear in the first season, which usually doesn't happen.
In the first book, he's just mentioned, but the series already has an actor confirmed. I'm interested to see how he'll appear and be explored in the show. I think there's enough time to explore a lot more about him, and who knows, maybe find out a bit more about him. Thank you so much for watching until now. I'll see you in the next episode, and until then, mischief managed.